Good evening and welcome to Torah Studies. This week's Parsha Vayeitzei, and tonight is actually Tes Kislev, the 9th day of Kislev. It is the birthday and the yahrzeit of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. No, I'm sorry, not the previous. I mean the Mittel Rebbe. That's the second Rebbe, the son of the Balatanya, the son of the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Dovber, and the teachings of tonight is actually related with the time of the Mittel Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe. That we learn the lessons from the war. The 7-year war was between Prussia and Austria. And as we know from the Baal Shem Tov, that everything what we see, we learn the lesson. So Jews also learn the lesson. And the lesson being learned, as the Alter Rebbe explained, is a new way of how to fight our challenges. The Rebbe explains this, and connected with this week's Torah portion with Yaakov Avinu. And basically, what we're talking about, how there's the traditional way of fighting a war, and there is the way that we learn, what the Alter Rebbe learned, what he heard from the son of the Mizritcher Magid, his colleague and teacher, of what we learned from this particular war. So, in this week's Torah portion, we read about Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov, our father, the third of the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yaakov, he was, we know the story, he ran away from his brother, his father and mother both told him to go all the way to Haran, to the Uncle Lavan. It was not a picnic over there. It was a difficult challenge that Yaakov Avinu had. And in this place, Yaakov, although being a pious and holy man, but being in a place of Lavan, he had to do something to overcome the challenges of that place, of the seat of his uncle, and to raise a family there with children in such an environment was not an easy task. And our sages tell us, what did he do in order to overcome these challenges? So the Talmud said he was saying Tehillim. There's two opinions there. One opinion says that he was saying the whole Tehillim, and the other opinion is that he was saying 15 particular chapters. Those are the 15 chapters from chapter 120 to chapter 134. And those are called the Shir Amalos, the Song of the Steps, as we'll soon see. Of course, you can ask the question, the Tehillim, the Psalms, was not written until later. How did Yaakov read the 15 chapters of Tehillim, or the whole Tehillim, according to the other opinion? But the answer is, of course, that our patriarchs, they knew the Torah before it was written. They were learning the Torah, and they were doing the mitzvahs even before it was given. So let's see inside. So again, the topic that we're dealing with is how to deal with our challenges in life, especially the spiritual challenges. What is the best way of overcoming negative tendencies such as anger, arrogance, conceit, greed, and so on? Says the Rebbe, there are two ways to heal an illness. One is to administer localized medicine to the organ in question. The other is a holistic treatment of the entire body, which automatically strengthens the immune system and heals the localized illness of a particular organ. And that is what we want to apply into the spiritual battle as well. So as we said, the Yaakov Avinu, what did Yaakov do in order to overcome the challenges that he had by his uncle Lavan? So we said he was saying Tehillim, and particularly according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, what prayers did he chant? Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Levi, said he chanted the 15 songs of ascent from the book of Psalms. Now those 15 songs of ascent, they correspond to the 15 steps that was in the Holy Temple between the courtyards of the women's section and the men's section. There were 15 steps, and the Levites in the morning, they would pray there in the temple. They would sing those 15 chapters from the book of Psalms. Now the question is, why 15? Okay, let's back up a little bit. We said there were two opinions, right? One opinion says that he was saying the whole Tehillim, the whole Psalms. The other one says that he was saying that 15 Psalms. Now, the whole Tehillim, I can understand. Yaakov Avinu was working very, very hard. His father-in-law made him work very, very hard. Didn't have any sleep at night. It was cold and so on. He had no sleep at all. And so during these years that he was there, he would chant the Tehillim. He would say the Psalms. The Psalms has amazing powers. But according to this opinion that he said these 15 chapters, what's so special about these 15 chapters? So our sages tell us that the reason why King David he wrote these 15 chapters, yes, they were corresponding to the 15 steps, but they were also corresponding to the 15 years that all the patriarchs lived simultaneously. There was a period of 15 years that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all three of them, lived together. When Yaakov, their grandson, was 15 years old, that's when Abraham passed away. That's what our sages tell us. This actually comes from the Chidah. Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He was a disciple of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. He says, King David sang 15 songs of ascent corresponding to the 15-year span during which all three patriarchs were alive. And as the Rebbe explains, Avram lived for 175 years. Yitzchak was born when Avram was 100 years old. Yaakov was born when Yitzchak was 60 years old. This gives us a 15-year span when all three patriarchs lived simultaneously. And as we see in the chart, 1813 BCE, Avram was born, 1713 Yitzchak was born, 1653 Yaakov was born, and Avram passed away at the year 1638 BCE. So that was a 15 years time when they all lived together. What's so special about it? What is so special about Yaakov Avinu wanting to overcome the challenges by focusing on these 15 chapters in order to celebrate or to commemorate or to remember the strength and to gather the strength from these 15 years that they all lived together? there must be something about these three patriarchs. And the idea is, what we are going to explain is that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, each one of them, represents a certain path. Abraham represents the path of kindness. Yitzchak represents the path of severity, fear. Abraham is love, Yitzchak is fear. Yaakov represents the path of compassion, which is somewhat a combination of both. For Yaakov, he realized in order to overcome, in order to fight the challenges of Lavan, his father-in-law, to raise a family there, with all of overcoming all the challenges, he needed that power that comes out of all three patriarchs. A combination of all three of them, as we'll soon explain. Now, as we said before, the lesson what we're going to learn here today is a lesson from the Alter Rebbe that he heard from his colleague, Rabbi Avram, the son of the Vayeitzei Maggid, and the lesson of the battle of King Friedrich of Prussia, when he won. This was in December 5, 1756. It was then the Battle of the Prussia with Austria, and there was there was a battle where the king of the Prince Charles of Austria, he had a big army, and they were about 65,000 soldiers, I believe, and Friedrich had a much smaller army, and however, he had about 30,000. However, he came up with a strategy. He says usually they would fight. They would divide the army into three divisions, and then they would have front. All three divisions would confront and fight the war. And what he did, he was able to deceive the Austrians. Came first with one division trying to attack, and then he retreated. Charles of Austria thought that he gave up. He saw the size of his army, so he gave up. But in the meantime, what the King Friedrich did, he went and he took all of his army, went south, and he went and he attacked one division with all three divisions. And that became known as the Oblique attack. And for ages, for generations, people studied this battle, and Jews also studied it. But the Jews studied, as we said before, the Baal Shem Tov said that from everything what you see, you can study to learn and take out a message how this applies in your spiritual life, in your battle, your own battle, when you battle the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, how to battle and how to deal with it. As we see inside, Baal Shem Tov taught that everything we see and here contains a lesson from God about how to serve Him better. We must seek the underlying meaning and not, God forbid, misunderstand the intent. And here comes the Alter Rebbe, and he said what he heard. He gave it over to his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, He told it to his son, of course, the Mittler Rebbe, that tonight is this Yahrzeit and the birthday and Yahrzeit, Tes Kislev. And tomorrow night is actually also the Chag HaGeula, the day of redemption of the Mittler Rebbe. So we are in special days. So he said as follows. He said the traditional order of battle is that each army divides its forces into 3 divisions, 1 in the center and 2 flanking right and left. The opposing military arrays its troops in much the same way. When the signal is given, each division battles its opposite number. And what happened there, as we said, that this king made something else. He did a trick. The Austrian left was commanded by Hungarian Hussar General Nadasti. Nadasti watched with horror the Prussian columns appeared behind Lopetins and wheeled around his flank. He dispatched orderly after orderly to Prince Charles at the other end of the Austrian line with messages that the Prussian attack was about to fall on the left flank. But Prince Charles was unconvinced and slow to take action to remedy this situation when no attack developed on the right flank. He was used to all the flanks facing each other. So he came to a conclusion that the Prussian army has seen the extent to which it was outnumbered and hurried away south in full retreat. In any case, the Austrian line was so long that it took the best part of an hour to move a significant body of infantry from the right to the left. Nadasti was beyond assistance. And that's what happened. So by the time the sun had set, that day, December 5th, the Prussian army defeated this division. They attacked with all 3 divisions. They attacked this division, and then they took over the other divisions until they defeated them completely. That was the Oblique attack. The Friedrich of Prussia defeated a larger army by attacking a single division of the enemy with all 3 of his divisions. He then attacked the 2 remaining divisions and prevailed. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says, what he heard from his colleague Abavon. Friedrich succeeded because he brilliantly arrayed all 3 of his divisions against a single division of the enemy. This tactic is called attackieren in Yiddish, means attacking. Attackieren. In this tactic, all 3 divisions surround and engage a single division of the enemy and overpowered it. Subsequently, they attacked the enemy's 2nd and 3rd divisions, respectively, in like manner until the enemy was defeated. And the question is, what's the lesson to us? What is the moral? How can we apply this tactic in our daily spiritual war? The internal conflict against the Vayeitzei hara. And here is what the Alter Rebbe comes and says that when it comes to battling the challenges that we have, there's 2 ways we can do it. There is the traditional way, and there is the King Friedrich's way, the smart way. The traditional way is each division attack its opponent. You have a problem with anger? Focus on anger. Focus how terrible anger is. how bad it is, what it can lead to. You have problems with lusts and loves to negative things, focus how disgusting this is, how bad it is. And then you deal with this. That is the traditional way. You can call it the way of Musar, focusing how low our human desires sometimes can fall. And we realize how nonsense this is. All this nonsense, arrogance, and so on. That's a traditional way. Is that a good way? Yes, you probably will succeed most of the times when you work that way, but there is a better way yet. Says the Alter Rebbe, the lesson that the saintly Rabbi Avram was the son of the Mizritcher Maggid, as I said before. The Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneir Zalman, he came to Mizrich. He was a great scholar. He came to by the young age of 19. And he was a genius, a scholar, knowledgeable with all the Torah. And he came to Mizrich. He said, I heard in Mizrich they teach you how to pray. Obviously, we're not talking about how to pray, how to read the words, but the deeper meanings, the Hasidus, the Kabbalistic meanings. And that's where he came to Mizrich, to the Rabbi Dov Ber of Mizrich. Rabbi Dov Ber had his son. They called him Rabbi Avram. His name was Rabbi Avram. They called him Rabbi Avram the Angel. He was a very spiritual, holy Jew. So the Mizritcher Maggid, Rabbi Dov Ber, said to the Alter Rebbe, I want you to sit down with my son, Rabbi Avram. You're going to teach him Gemara, the Talmud, and he's going to teach you Hasidus, and that's what he did. And this was one thing that Rabbi Avram taught him also. He told him about the lesson we learn from the war that everybody was talking about. This is the lesson that the saintly Rabbi Avram derived from this in the service of God. We must battle our internal negative urges. For God enables unholiness to counter holiness. It says in the Kohelet in Ecclesiastes, Ze le'umat ze asa Elokim. God created the forces in the world, everything opposing the other. If there is forces of love, the power of love in holiness, there is power of love in unholiness. Everything there's the counterpart. That's the way God created us. As we have positive holy traits such as love, reverence, compassion, and beautification, to name a few, so are we endowed with attraction to unholy pleasures, aversion to piety, etc. Now, how do we battle this? One would think that the best way to restrain and even transform the unholy forces is to fight each trait with its opposite number. Arousing our love for holiness displaces and subdues our passion for inappropriate pleasures. Similarly, reverence for sanctity expels inappropriate fear, etc. And that is indeed a very valid way that was done for many, many years. This is like a conventional war in which each division battles the enemy's corresponding division. That's the conventional war. And that is something that you are meant to be able to do it and to win with this. Why? Because really everything is rooted, everything is sourced in the holiness. Everything comes from holiness. Love originates in the holy love, and then it derives on holy love. And the same thing with every power. because holiness, God, is the source of everything. So as a rule, sacred traits are more potent than their opposite numbers, unholy, profane traits. As light is superior to darkness, so is holiness superior to unholiness. That's the nature of light. When we shine the light of truth on our unholy urges, they lose their power to resist. However, there is a problem there. Using this method sometimes you will succeed, but not always. Just like when there's the war between two armies. If sometimes this side wins and sometimes the other side wins. Even if you're stronger, even if you know that the holy side has more power, nevertheless, the fact that you deal with unholy love, you're putting it in your mind about, let's talk about the being boastful and arrogant and talking about greatness. You think about those things and you say, it's not a good trait, but you know what? A little bit, there is something that it talks to me about this. And yes, you're fighting it. And yes, you're trying to defeat these unholy thoughts, but yet something creeps in. There's no guarantee that one day it's not going to overpower you. Because it's a struggle. When you struggle, it says when you wrestle someone who is dirty, then some dirt will stick on you also. You wrestle with these things, even though you know Hashem promises you have the power of the truth and you're going to win, but something sticks. That is the the drawbacks of this side. That says the Alter Rebbe. The truth is that this method is sometimes insufficient to win the war. At times, the unholy side rises with desperate intensity to win a battle. This is consistent with the passage. One kingdom will alternately be mightier than the other. That's what we read last week. When Rivka had the twins, and she was confused because whenever she passed by a holy place, she felt the baby want to come out, and she passes by an unholy place, a place of idol worship. Again, the baby wants to come out, and she didn't know what's going on until she went to the sage, and the sage told her, don't worry, it's not one child with bipolar, it's two children. And the one will go this way, one will go the other way, and then it says they will fight with each other, and then one nation will alternately be mightier than the other, meaning that when this one falls, this one rises. When this one rises, this one falls, and this corresponds to the two forces of inclinations that we have in ourselves. We have the good inclination, the evil inclination. Sometimes the good side wins, and sometimes the other side wins. And that's what Rabbi Hillel Parisher, which was a disciple of the Mittel Rebbe, he said, there are two drawbacks. The first is that the winning side also suffers losses when armies square off face to face. Yes, the winning side will win, but it still suffers losses. And the second is that there might be warriors and leaders among the survivors who flee the battlefield. With time, they might raise a new army and put up new resistance. Talking about fighting the war, fighting the Hamas. If you don't finish them, you leave over some then they might raise one day and again, start the whole thing again. You got to make sure you have to finish them. So this is the drawbacks of face-to-face fights. Number one, in addition to the losing side, the winning side will face losses, and the other side is survivors among the losing side may flee the battlefield and form a resistance. Continues the Mezritcher Maggid and says, this is why there is an alternative way. There's an alternative way that was revealed by the teachings of the Hasidus, by the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Says Rabbi Hillel, the same is true of the traditional method to fight inappropriate urges versus the techniques innovated by the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. The traditional Jewish ethics books, Sifrei Musa, derided the negative traits and explained why we must eschew them. For example, they described the decadence of arrogance, how terrible to be arrogant, haughtiness, and lust in the many iterations. Examining each of these traits in detail to distance ourselves from them leads to two inevitable consequences. The first is that contemplating our consuming and shameful needs for honor and prestige, etc., inadvertently triggers haughtiness. When you think about it, like I said before, you think you battle something, even if you think about it in a negative way, but you think about this tempting desires. And then you say to yourself, yeah, those tempting desires are terrible. You shouldn't have them. But you're dealing about it, you're putting it in your head. The second is that we can't entirely eradicate our natural negative traits because self-love closes our eyes to the extent of our faults. This is certainly true of our subtle flaws. After all, we use our natural finite minds to battle our natural blemishes, and our fallible reasons is incapable of fully identifying and excising its natural flaws. Let's consider, for example, if sometimes you have a problem with the spouse and you're acting not nicely to the spouse. And then you stop thinking yourself, why am I so nasty? Why am I so not nice to her? And yes, you could think and come to a conclusion, I should work on myself. I shouldn't be so nasty. But you know what? Sometimes you're going to come to a conclusion and say, wait a second, why am I so nasty? Maybe I'm justified to be nasty. Maybe she's not acting nicely. And where does it lead you? To keep being nasty. Or sometimes you can think of, you know what? I'm a terrible person. I'm a nasty person. And you're going to talk yourself into the fact that you're a lost cause. I'm a nasty person anyway. Whatever I'm going to do, not going to help me. Again, goes back full circle, and you're back in the same problem. Now comes the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Avram, and tells us we have another way. The other way is attack with all three divisions. What does that mean? Rather than talking to yourself, saying how terrible you are. Talk about how wonderful your spouse is in using this example. If you think about the good things, you think about how great that person is, how lonely you would be without her. And you think all of the good things, all of the positive things you can think about, and then you're going to say, wait a second, why am I so nasty? So you're not focusing on yourself, you're focusing on the greater picture, on how positive the other side is. That's just using the example. When you want to deal with your own flaws, you talk about how great God is, how much love we should have for God. What leads to love? There is, in general, the three lines. There is the love, the fear, and compassion. In Chassidus, we talk about it a lot in our Tanya classes. You have the love, thoughts that leads to love Hashem, thoughts that lead to the awe and fear of Hashem, and thoughts that lead to compassion on your soul. Those are the things that you're not focusing on yourself. You're focusing on something else, on somebody else. You're focusing on the greater picture. You're attacking with all of your forces. So this is the flip your perspective. Rather than telling God how big your problems are, tell your problems how big God is. Don't focus on your problems. Focus on godliness. Focus on the greatness of Hashem. And then you realize how close you want to be to Him and how afraid you are of being separated from Him. Says the Alter Rebbe, if you worry about your grave sins, God forbid, set aside opportune times when the mind is calm to reflect on the greatness of God, against whom you have sinned. So you don't focus on this, and just focus on the greatness of God. And when you do that, this is the way it becomes. First, so here you're not dealing with, as we said before, if you wrestle a dirty person, you get dirty. You're not wrestling a dirty person. You're not dealing with your thoughts, with your bad thoughts, with your evil thoughts. You're focusing only on purity, only on godliness. Focusing, the more you study about the greatness of Hashem, the more you study the Tanya, the more you study the Chassidus, and you're dealing about the greatness of Hashem, there's nowhere to get dirty. You're only in a good place. And of course, that will have an effect on you, that your actions will be different automatically. The Alter Rebbe, the best way is to arouse all three positive urges to surround and battle a single inappropriate appetite. This will undoubtedly displace and defeat it. It is the attackieren, in Yiddish, attacking method, of bringing three armies to bear against one and to attack from an oblique position. Surprise them. Surprise your animal soul. Surprise your enemy, your Yetzer Hara. Similarly, after defeating our first inappropriate urge, we array all three positive holy desires against the second inappropriate urge and attack it. Continue this way until all the cravings are defeated. And this is what the Alter Rebbe explains. That's exactly what Yaakov Avinu did. That is why Yaakov, dealing with building a family in the place of darkness, he felt that we need to use this method. Says to survive our exile, says the Rebbe, we too require the 15 songs of ascent that correspond to the 15 years that the patriarchs were alive simultaneously. This is because the three patriarchs represent the three cardinal sacred traits: love, reverence, and compassion. When we simultaneously tap into all three patriarchs and their sacred qualities, we can overcome and even obliterate every trial we encounter in exile. And that's the answer to the question: how do we deal with the issues with all three, in all three ways? So the key points we learn from here, from this lesson: the traditional battle method is that armies are divided into three divisions: right, left, and center. The opposing army is similarly arrayed. When the signal is given, the two armies attack each other head on. Now, during the 7-Year War, Friedrich of Prussia defeated a much larger army by attacking the enemy's left flank with all his divisions. He then attacked the remaining divisions and prevailed. Everything serves as a lesson to help us serve God. When we are infiltrated by something inappropriate, the traditional method is to oppose it by arousing a desire and love for God. The stronger, holier desire displaces the inappropriate infiltration. Infatuation. The inappropriate infatuation. This is a suitable method, but sometimes the other side might win. Even in defeat, it can exact a heavy price from the victor. The better method is to simultaneously arouse all three traits: love of God, fear of sin, and compassion for our souls. This way, the inappropriate urge will be overwhelmed and fade entirely away. So this is the lesson we learn from this. What is interesting is that this method, we learn nothing new. Yaakov Avinu, we learned that from our father Jacob, but for many generations, for many thousands of years, Jews had one method. The other method, the traditional way of fighting the war. But then, when Hasidus came about, and just so happened that in that time there was this war with the Friedrich, the king of Prussia, and his brilliant move gave us understanding how to fight our Yetzer Hara in a better way. And that was one of the things we learned. The Baal Shem Tov says you learn from everything. So Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence, it happened right then and right there. And the Alter Rebbe taught us that is the way we should deal with our challenges. And the main thing is that we should all win our internal wars, which will help the Jewish people win the war that they're fighting now with the enemies that we have today. And it should have without any casualties, God forbid. Should be only in a victorious way, and ultimately should be the winning of the war of Mashiach. And Mashiach should come very soon. Amen. So, ready for war?